how are you?
I'm good, how are you?
Oh, good. Your mother is okay? She was not well?
Mother-in-law?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's fine.
She's okay?
Getting better. A little better.
That's good.
But unfortunately, everybody got the cold.
Yeah, it's just something that cannot be avoided, especially in a house with children.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Very good, thank you. Stop.
Wonderful. Very nice. Today we are going to do a section called Satsanga Sudha. In my book it's on page 94 and it's called section 8. We finished the other one which was Raga Tyaga Nirnayaha. Tyage Ragaha and Ragasya Tyagaha. The desire to renounce, and we saw all various categories of people wanting to, very keen on renunciation, correct? Yeah. Who were they? Thieves. What do they renounce? Their hometown. Why? Because they don't want to be found out. And so there's a whole list of people who give up their houses. Lovers give up the house so that they can elope, correct? Yeah. And then who else? People who are angry, rebels. They give up their house because they can't agree with anybody there. So they want to go sulk somewhere and rebel somewhere. And this is not the same as the yogi giving up the house. We saw that very well, very nicely. Very nice section, beautifully done. And then we're going to skip the next one. I wonder why. It's always interesting. Let's take a look as to why we are skipping the next one. It's not a bad section to do. It's the reason we are skipping it is because it is very specific to someone who has grown up in the tradition. So if I was teaching this in India, I would definitely not skip it. I'll just say I'll just talk about the summary of it, and then we can go to the next section so that you don't feel like we have really skipped it. So basically, this is a small section of 5 or 6 verses on how to gain the qualifications. How to be a person who is qualified for the study of Vedanta. And within the Indian context, in the Hindu context, there are certain, things which are kind of benchmarkers if you grow up in the tradition, and that is what is being, talked about. So, the first it says that you lead a life of dharma, and then it naturally culminates into jignasa, desire to study, or mumuksha, desire to be free. And then, of course, people who are interested in dharma means what? Righteous ways, right? And they are interested in righteous ways. Why? Because they want karma phala. Karma phala, why? Because they want heaven, most of them. And so it talks about how there are many ways to go to heaven, but then, that is not moksha. And moksha means the desire to study must be there, and then what if one doesn't have the desire to study? Then what do you have to do? You have to do as the Veda says. All your daily duties, all the things that need to be done, the seva and bhakti, all these things, because they will help with the maturity, if not in this life, other lives. And then what if you can't study the Veda? What if you don't want what if you are not able to study the Veda? Why is someone not able to study the Veda? Because one is living in a foreign country. Yeah, what you said is not relevant for us. That's why I'm summarizing it. So, if one is living in a foreign country, then it's difficult to study the Veda. And even in India, in the olden days, there was a group of people that were disbarred from studying the Veda, unfortunately women included. And as the religion became more strict and patriarchal, there was a injunction that women should not study the Veda and certain categories of people must not study the Veda. What about them? Well, the author points out that Vedanta is everywhere. It is there in the Puranas, it is there in the folk songs, and if somebody has the proclivity for getting this, interested in moksha, for getting interested in liberation, nothing can prevent that. As we have seen, because people here don't know V for Veda, nobody knows, but still there are so many mumukshus. So that is the whole point of this section, okay? So you didn't miss much out, but I just didn't think that we needed this, we needed to go into this. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Satsanga Sudha. Sudha means ambrosia, nectar. And what is the nectar? Satsanga. Sat means that which exists. So only, literally, it means spending time, sangha, association with that which exists. But there is a very beautiful way to put things. Because the idea is that the rest of the time, what are we doing? We are spending time with the non-existent things. Asat. Asat here doesn't mean, non-existent. It means mithya. So things that really don't exist ultimately, that is what we keep, we keep getting expertise in PhD in mithya. Yeah. Keep on studying about, things that don't matter. And we spend so much time in the inconsequential that what is consequential is forgotten, is not even understood. Oh, but we live in a world of duality and we have to give a nod to it. Nod is okay, but who said go drown in it? That's the thing. In giving it a nod, one is, this is duality is very interesting. That the whole world of subject, object, and how it attracts, how it catches. First it says I'm ignored. Everybody is becoming a sadhu, Mithya's complaint. Everybody is increasingly going for Vedanta. What about me? Why me? And then you say, all right, I'll have a little cha-cha-cha with you, no problem. This is just a harmless little thing. How can this harm me? I am so established in this knowledge. In fact, I attend even the classes that are not there. And so... So, how can this small little dalliance take me away from the magnanimity of this teaching, this wonderful teaching which accommodates everything, which is so wonderful. In fact, this is Brahman, that is Brahman, everything is Brahman. So this Brahman in this particular form, which comes in a bottle, for example, bottle Brahman. And so this is nothing wrong, I'll just have a sip. Yeah. Then what happens? Then the bottle starts to multiply. Even sitting on the counter. Oh, where did you both come from? I thought there was only one. And then the bottle starts to talk. Come, no problem, come to me. And then before you know it, one becomes enslaved. Yes, that is the whole thing. So, and I just gave an extreme example with some kind of an addiction. But, we don't have to have bottles and drugs for addiction. Everything is addictive. Even things you do not like, even things you think you do not like, ultimately are addictive. Because in the beginning, blue cheese, oh my God, it's fungus on top of fungus. Who wants this double fungus? And who wants this? No, it's gourmet. Gourmet means anything is okay. Whether it has crawled, swum, walked, whatever it is. It's all okay. Gourmet means I have to try it. Incidentally, it is spelled gourmet, but it is a French word. Yeah. So, gourmet. Okay, I'll try it. So, little bit of, you just say, well, not really nice, but because there was all this company and because there was peer pressure and because it was, the holidays. So I thought I will just have a little bit. Not very good. Next time, oh, not bad. I wonder why I had such a reaction to it. And after that, next time you encounter it, all of a sudden in the supermarket, hello, it says from the aisle. And oh, yeah, I met you at the party last time. I want to come home with you. Okay. This cannot be, this cannot be wrong. Come on. And then after that, what? It becomes part of the weekly grocery list. Then after that, without that, if it's not there, I make a special trip to the store to get it. This is Sangha, association. From Saj, Sangha, to be in contact with. So then I have to make a special trip. And then after that, what? Finally, if it is not there, I get irritable, angry, and I don't feel like myself. All because of fungus, on top of fungus. This is what it is. So this is hardly, Sudha. Sudha means what? Nectar. This is not nectar at all, This is in fact, an understanding. The title itself is very telling. Because Satsanga Sudha means the nectar of the company or the association with that which is existent. That is what is the true meaning of satsang, that which exists. Because we know that there is only one thing that exists. What is that? Aham, I. Because everything else is virtual reality, virtually non-existent, dependent reality. It depends on this aham alone. It is dependent on aham. And what is it called? Idam. Yeah. So the idam sangha, that is what the whole thing is. Usually the sangha, the association, the penchant, the proclivity, the tendency is to go into and surround oneself with idam. The more idam, the less aham. At least in the beginning we have to maybe make this separation. Ultimately, of course, when we understand the idam resolves into aham, the aham is proudly irresolute. It does not resolve. That's why it is Sat. Because there is no resolution. It does not resolve or dissolve into anything else. Aham is I. The I alone is self-standing everything stands because I stands. That's all it is. And this is not understood. So therefore the whole time is spent in the company and in association with things, ideas, and preoccupations, pursuits that ultimately do not matter. They matter and they don't matter. They matter because they are a means for growth, means for, gaining maturity. All this, then it's okay. But they don't matter because they are a dead end and leave one deadened. That's what it is. This jaded, faded jiva starts to sing some songs. Yeah, where are you? I'm all by myself. How could you have abandoned me? I'm alone. I'm alienated. And the alienation increases the more I play in the realm of the non-existent. That's what it is. But it is all Bhagavan. Yeah, it is all Bhagavan. That's an attitude. So if it is Bhagavan, then how come, I don't get to play in the world of the finite? Bhagavan gets to play in the world of the finite because Bhagavan understands this. That's why it is called Leela. Bhagavan understands this. For Bhagavan there is nothing finite. And you also will understand this. The more one assimilates this knowledge, the more one understands this. That, that at least for a sadhaka, in the beginning, any kind of play into the world of the finite can be dangerous. It's like playing with fire. You think you have fire under control. You think you are self-proclaimed pyromaniac. Yeah, love to play with fire. And then what? It has the last word. It has the last burp. Swallows. Yeah, finished. No argument here. It is a totalizing force. Same thing here. So when the distinction between the aham and the idam is not understood, the consequences can be disastrous. At worst. And at best, it keeps one just dangling and revolving in the world of the status quo. Just little bit of this, that, whatever it is. And one can be attending classes also, but still somehow that one is not able to make that leap. One is still, what's the word for it? Stuck in this quagmire of subject-object. So then, what is advised here? We are just looking at the title. We haven't even gotten to the first verse. What is advised here is Sat Sangha, company or association with what? Sat. Associate with Sat. And we understand what is Sat. What is Sat? But I hate myself. I'd love to spend time with myself. But no thank you, I can't stand myself. If you leave me alone for 2 minutes, I'll have a tantrum. That is the situation. If I'm left alone for 5 minutes, then the world comes to an end. Let alone, the whole day or the whole lifetime. I can't be without idam, because who is being talked to? Who is being told, keep the company of aham or sat? Who is being told? The one who is helplessly embroiled in the world of idam, thinking that it will lead to aham. So you take this addicted person and say, please don't have alcohol. What is that person going to do? That person is going to say, yes, go away, immediately go to the shop and buy another bottle. Because it's not in one's hands. Because you are talking to somebody whose value system here is compromised. And so even if they want to, it's beyond them. Why? Because their whole understanding is just, jeopardized by the force of the addiction. This is also just like an addiction. The addiction into asat, mithya. The addiction for the non-existent is extremely rampant. It has an abiding presence in samsara, right? And so how do you take this addicted person and tell them focus on aham, not idam? It's not possible. And so what is really satsang then? Satsang ultimately means staying with oneself, staying with that which is lasting, staying with that which is infinite, staying with I, abiding in the I is the ultimate form of satsang. But that's not possible. So what do? You go to somebody who brandishes, who models this abidance. Then that becomes satsang. Because how many sats are there? One, yeah. So if I can't abide in the I, then I go sit with somebody who is abiding in the I, then it is as good as me, abiding in the I being only one. So, but then I get addicted to that person. That's also not good, because here what is happening is I'm just displacing the addiction. Frequently in AA what happens, they give up alcohol and then they just keep making coffee. I've seen this. 20 cups of coffee a day. So what has happened? It has, gone from this to coffee, or they take up smoking, or whatever it is. So isn't that the same here? No. Why not? Why is that not the same here? In here also it should be the same. I should, here I'm addicted to idam. And then, then you say, then you take me to a satsang. Then you take me to somebody who is able to abide in the I, and sitting with them I feel wonderful. Coming home I feel miserable. And so the next day also I go sit with them, and for the time that I'm sitting with them I am wonderful. Then I come home, in a puddle again, I'm miserable. Then what is happening here? What is happening is that addiction has just been sublimated, that's all. To a certain extent, not really sublimated, it has been transferred. It has been transferred on to another person, another object. No. Why? Because that object, quote unquote, really happens to be the subject. And that subject being you, it's not yet one more addiction. And here we are talking of someone who is able to abide, and that's what Narahari is going to make very clear in this short section. Not just a Brahmanishtha, but a Shrotriya as well. That's the clincher. Brahmanishtha means a mystic. Who is a mystic? Somebody who may know that all this is one, and I am that one. All this is limitless. Like we have all these people in the Sufi tradition, so many mystics. We have Rumi and Hafiz, and they're all wonderful. Some of them were teachers also. Some of them were just mystics. They wrote poetry, they did not trouble anybody. In fact, they were a source of inspiration. People would go sit with them. A mystic need not be a teacher. And if the mystic is a teacher, then the mystic knows what to communicate and how to communicate. But many times, often, mystics are in their own trance. They don't want to be bothered to teach or whatever it is. Whoever sits, comes, learns, let them, And if they get something, let them. If they don't get something, let them. They have so much Shraddha in Bhagavan, they just leave it all to Bhagavan. Including the fate of your own, moksha, they leave in the hands of Bhagavan. They're not going to take and try to correct some perception and do anything. And sitting with such people is extremely, has a lightening, if not an enlightening effect. Because that person is so much within oneself that you go sit with the person may not even talk, or the person may talk a few things, doesn't matter. You go sit with the person, you certainly feel elevated. You feel like, oh my God, what was I doing up till now? This is better than any kind of a high. You get a big feeling, a big boost in self-esteem. You feel like there is no problems in life, and you go sit with such people. It is very, very, embracing, accommodating, enhancing, very elevating. But that's only part of the story according to Narahari. That is where the addiction can develop, because, here you are looking at the person as the source of my lack of, duality or whatever it is that's troubling me. I am transposing or transferring my feeling of well-being to the person. That when the person is there, I am okay. When the person is not there, when I am not sitting with the person, I am not okay. This is what I am doing. And so, Narahari makes it very clear that he is not just talking about going and sitting with just a mystic. Mystic matram? No. Why? Because of this problem. The mystic knows but does not care to communicate many times. So mystic here means Brahmanishtha, the one who abides in the I, in Brahman. Brahmani nishtha yasya. But according to Narahari, that is not a complete satsang. That is just the sa of the sasang. It's not full, complete yet. Why? Because it has this problem of transferring the addiction onto the person. And that's why we have so many cults, spiritual cults, where the person becomes the head, and that it is all centered on the person. And when the person is not there, people are miserable. And people squabble because that person has to give a certain attention, and that it's all centered on the person. Here, in the parampara, in a teaching tradition, it's not centered on the person. What is it centered on? It is centered on the knowledge. It is knowledge centered, not person centered. And what is that knowledge of? Sat. And who is the one who abides in that knowledge? Sat. Who are you? Sat. Sitting with such a person? Sat. Sangha. That is Sat Sangha. Because the knowledge is not transferred by osmosis. Were it so easy, that would be wonderful. No, forget the book. Just go sit. Yeah, just go sit and rub against them, and then it rubs off. People do that in rural areas, Yeah, in rural areas where the bhakti is a lot in India. I went with Pujya Swamiji to a village in Andhra Pradesh. I will never forget this. It was a thronging crowd. There must have been at least 10,000 people. And they wanted their babies to be blessed. And their Shraddha was so much that you saw babies flying in the sky, 9-month-old, 18-month-old. They would throw the baby, literally, to reach Pujya Swamiji's lap. So we had to make a kind of a circle of baby catchers. I mean, I think I must, in that 3 hours, I must have caught at least 25 babies. Came flying. I mean, I was just one of them. There was 10 other, people, 10 other students along with me. Each one, average 25. So 250 babies were caught and then presented to Pujya Swamiji to kiss, to love, to touch, to bless. And then they were, and they were just saying, throw them back. No, come and take them. And then the women would come, then because the punya, the all this blessing, it is believed are in the Mahatma's feet, because the feet are the foundation, And so the punya travels down and then gets lodged in the feet, kind of like edema. So and so the women would, and in those days Pujya Swamiji was very strong and fit and able, and the women would milk his legs from the knees downwards, milking out the punya, pressing. Very depressing to see that. It was not one or two, it was thousands, So that Shraddha is there, that belief is there. It's actually very touching to watch. And then what they get is punya, of course. But punya gives what? Punya means good karma. You get good karma if you throw the baby into the Mahatma's lap, and if it makes it there, yes, you get good karma. The baby also is duly blessed and gets good karma, and then you touch the feet or you milk the feet, you get good karma. What does the good karma do? It prepares you for the knowledge. It cannot be the stand-in for the knowledge. So really speaking, all this, is not going to, the knowledge does not happen by karma. Karma and moksha are allergic to each other. Karma does not produce moksha, because moksha is not a product, it is already you. The problem is that I don't know this, and so therefore I have to sit with somebody who does. Simple. End of argument. This is what is the definition of satsanga. So when I sit with somebody who knows, then a lot of nice things start to happen. So you sit with somebody who is a Shrotriya and a Brahmanistha here. Even though the word satsang is used loosely to even sit with one another or sit in a group, here there is no group, nothing. Just sitting with somebody who is Sat. I'm also Sat, but do you know it? No. The one who is committed to Sat, the one who is nothing but Sat, the one who abides in Sat, the one who has quote unquote become one with Sat, even though there is no becoming here. So that is the person you sit with or you associate with, you sit at the feet of. That is the definition of Satsanga, and it is indeed Sudha. Sudha here means nectar. Nectar of immortality, literally. Why? Because what is Sat other than immortal? Sat is immortal. So therefore, that which this Satsanga produces, so to speak, is that which is not a product at all. So this quote-unquote nectar, which is, which is the prasada of satsanga, is actually you. But you receive it as prasada because it was hitherto unknown. Now it is received as known. That's what it is. So this pot of immortality, this prasada of immortality is the prasada of satsanga, but it is, even though I think it is produced by this association with the wise, it is not really a product. It is seen as a product. It is presented as a product because of my own ignorance. Immortality can never be a product because it is limitless. Limitless is not a product. It is already self-existent, and that self-existent in Sanskrit is called Sat. Sangha, association with Sat. And the nectar here is prasada. And actually Satsanga Sudha, Satsangaha eva Sudha, Karmadharaya. That samasa, that compound is not sixth case. It's not the nectar of immortality. It is a nectar that is immortality. Yeah. It is not a product of satsanga. It is that which is satsanga itself. It's not a product, even though it's presented as that, because from the standpoint of one's own ignorance. Okay? Yeah. So with this, we can delve into the verse and see what happens. Satsanga sudhaya tata. No tea break between satsanga and sudha. Satsanga sudhaya tata. Mana ananditai yada. Nishchetavyam tada mohat. Muktir mama muktir bhavishyati. Satsanga sudhaya tata. Mana ananditai yatha. Nishchetavyam tada mohat. Mama muktir bhavishyati. Yeah. So, satsanga sudhaya, instrumental case, through, by this nectar of immortality. The off is upacharikam. Off here is not really off. It's not a product. Yeah. The nectar that is immortality. So, through the nectar which is indeed immortality, and through the association which is indeed the nectar of immortality, what is happening through that? Tata, oh dear one, he is addressing the student. Mana ananditam yada. When the mind becomes happy. Yeah, very beautiful choice of words. Not when you become happy, because you are already happy. It is the complaining mind that says, oh, I wish I could just be sitting all the time. The mind stops complaining. This is true. This is really true, because the one who abides in oneness, whether they be a mystic or a teacher, Brahmanishtha or Brahmanishtha Shrotriya or simple Shrotriya, doesn't matter, then, the person sitting next to such a person immediately stops complaining. It's a magical effect. It's really magical. Why? Unless of course there is some mental or emotional problem that has to be resolved through therapy or medication, unless it is, we're not talking about, psychosis, we're talking about garden variety neuroses. Yeah. All of them come to rest in front of the Mahatma, in front of the great person of understanding, a person of great understanding. All those garden variety neuroses, I'm not okay, I don't have enough, I'm better than this one, I'm worse off than this one, why me, why not me, what am I getting out of this, is Vedanta working, how long should I meditate, and then after that should I contemplate or not, and what about shopping, where are my groceries coming from? All these thoughts, they come to rest. Why? Because that is the power of the I. Somebody wrote a book, Power of Now. Here, the power of I. That I is all encompassing. And it is all. And it being all, there is only one I. So one person abiding in that I has that strong, powerful presence to to stave off the complaints enough so that the person is able to see their real self, at least have a glimpse of it. Have some relief, That's just the beginning. The relief is given as a little present to be in the present. That's all. The relief is just the beginning. The relief is not the ultimate thing, because that relief is already you. It is not centered on the person. But that effect of that Sangha has that effect of quieting the querulous mind, the restless mind, the fearful mind. So that's why it is like nectar. It is sweet company. So Satsanga Sudhaya, oh dear student, through this association with the truth of oneself in the form of the Guru, in the form of the one who teaches, what happens when the mind becomes very happy, then what do? Don't just go into that happiness. Don't just completely get lost in the happiness. Make a decision. Nishchetavyam. Tavyam means you don't have an option. You have to make a decision. Tavya means what? Have to. Like Atma va are drashtavyah, shrotavyah, mantavyah, nididhyasitavyah. The suffix tavya has the force of a mandate, meaning you don't have a choice. Because if you don't make a decision, we'll see what the decision is. But if you don't make a decision basically to study, when the clouds of the mind clear and that ananda comes out, that ananda which is not the contact high of sitting with the Swami, but the ananda is just your own ananda that is brought out in the presence of the Mahatma, then you have to make a decision. And everybody will make a decision. The regular people, the samsari, will make a decision, I should come more often and sit. Because it's like the dog and bone story. The dog attributes the juiciness of the bone wrongly to its own blood that is coming from its own gums, because the sharp, dry bone is scraping the surface of the mouth of the dog. But it says, oh, the bone is very juicy. And so here the Mahatma is juicy. No, Atma is juicy, not Mahatma. Raso Vaisaha. Rasa means juice, essence. Rasagyevayam labdhvanandi bhavati. Raso Vaisaha. This Atma is full of that juice which you are looking for, which is called happiness, which is called Ananda, that unending Ananda that you want, you already are, you already have. Labdhva, having gained an insight into it, having gained an abidance in it, not having gained it, because it's a gain of something that's already gained. Nandi bhavati. Oh, but here Ananda, there Nanda, same thing. A is a prefix, okay? Aha, not there. But A is a prefix. Ang abhividhau. Ang maryada, maryada vachana, maryade. So two meanings of the word prefix a. A means up till. One meaning. A brahma bhuvana lokat punaravartinorjuna. 8th chapter. That even if you go up to Brahmaloka, up to, you see, up to Brahmaloka, there is a return. You come back here. Even going there, you don't really, even going there with the force of your karma, you are not freed. So that is one meaning of the prefix a. Another meaning is abhividhi. Abhividhi means, I don't know how to explain that, but I'll give an example. Like Ananda, for example, which is enhanced, fully blossomed. That is another meaning. And so here, Nand is the root verb, A is added to enhance it. and to show that it is unending, it is there always. So this Ananda I cannot attribute to the Mahatma because it is my own Ananda. So if one is a samsari, one will make a decision. Oh, this feels good, I should come again. I should come again and again. I should just sit. I should hang out with the Swami. And I should just, do that. And that is not the correct decision according to Narahari. Nishchetavyam, make a decision. And what is the decision? The decision is very beautiful decision, a Shubha Ichha, a very auspicious decision you please make. And what is that decision? Tada. Tada means at that time. When the mind starts to become happy, that is the time to make the decision. Muktir mohat mama bhavishyati. Meaning what? Make a decision, or I make a decision. What is the decision? That definitely I will be freed from delusion. Yeah, that is the decision to make. So, in the sweet company of the wise, it's very easy to make the wrong decision. An otherwise decision. What is that? I should come more often. I should sit more often here. This is a very good contact high. This Swami has some powers. I should get them. These are all wrong decisions. And what is the correct decision? Definitely I will be released. May I be released from bondage. And what is the bondage? Moha, delusion. What is delusion? Making wrong decisions. That is the delusion. Very beautiful. I mean, his opening verses are just, spot on. Very nice. But very beautiful and not very difficult. So, Nishchetavyam, Nishchita here means there is a certainty. Have that certainty, make a certain decision, meaning make a decision from which you do not, swerve. An unswerving decision, unswerving sankalpa you make in front of the Mahatma. More about that later, but I want to go back to the Gita here. Nishchayatmika buddhi, vyavasayatmika buddhi, ekeha kuru nandana, bahushakha hyanantascha, buddhir avyavasayinam. Arjuna is told by Lord Krishna in the second chapter, we have covered this. Vyavasayatmika buddhi, eka buddhi kuru. Kuru nandana, eka buddhi. Eka buddhi means one buddhi, one mind, single-minded decision. And what is that single-minded decision? To study this knowledge, to understand the self, to understand the only existent thing. Otherwise what happens? Bahushakhaha, many branched, anantaha, unending, limitless. What kind of limitless? Limitedly limitless. Finitely infinite are the choices for the one who has not made this decision. It's almost like Narahari is recalling the Gita because the words are similar. Vyavasayatmika buddhi by Adi Shankara is translated as Nishchayatmika buddhi. And it looks like he has read the Bhashya because he says Nishchetavyam. Make one decision sitting in front of the Mahatma. And I'll tell you more about the power of that decision a little later. Make one decision and one alone. And what is that decision? May I be freed from wrong decisions, from wrong pursuits. And what happens, is also elaborated in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita. What happens when you keep deciding to keep the company of asat, object? When you are totally focused on the object to the detriment of the subject, what happens? One falls prey to various kinds of pursuits which have nothing to do, which mislead one. Yamimam pushpitam vacham pravadanti vipaschitah avipaschitah vedavad ratah partha nanyadasti iti vadinah kamatmanah swargaparah janma karma phalapradam kriya vishesha bahulam. Bhogaihi, they are only interested in bhoga, not yoga. Bhoga ishwarya prasaktanam taya apahrita chetasam vyavasayatmaka buddhihi na bhavati kadachana. Not any time. And what is this? He describes, Lord Krishna describes a whole, like a train wreck, like a domino effect of all the things that happen when this nishchaya is not made, when that decision, the shubha decision is not made, what happens? One becomes the prey to all, one becomes permanently open to all kinds of things coming one's way. And here we are not even talking of objects, we are even talking of spiritual quote-unquote paths. Everything sounds good. Somebody says, catch the nose. Okay, wonderful. Just one question, Mahatma, how do I breathe? Catch the toes, cross the eyes, cross the nose. All these things. Breathe here, breathe there, breathe through the ears. All these things. So many choices. And that mumuksha is frittered, completely, scattered, because one is unable to make the correct decision. For want of the resolve, one becomes completely, hijacked and derailed from the pursuit. And then what? One becomes prey, Lord Krishna says, to flowery speeches. Pushpitam vacham, right? Flowery speeches. In India, in English, we say flowery speech. They must have got it from the Gita. Yeah, because English, succeeds the Bhagavad Gita, English language. So, pushpitam vacham, flowery speeches. And then what? They are only interested in the subject-object division. Vedavada ratah partha, they are only interested in the first portion of the Veda that talks about subject-object division. And how to get more objects and become happy, how to keep doing yajna at the drop of a hat. That's all it is. Homa hounds and Homa hogs. And this is what they are. And the Homa is Kamya Karma. So they just keep wanting something or the other and they keep doing all this. And then what? Kamatmana. So their whole body is their embodiment of Kama, embodiment of desire they are. Swargaparaha, they are only interested in heaven, nothing else. Here and hereafter, that's all. And then Janma Karma Phalapradam Kriya Vishesha Bahulam, because they are interested, they are doers. They keep, saying the birth is for doing, and through doing I get, what? Heaven. And then I come back, of course, and some more doing. Bhoga Ishwarya Gatim Prati. So their Gati is not Mukti. Gati means their end. Their end is not freedom from seeking. Their end is more and more seeking. Reeking of samsara. At this point it's not seeking, it's reeking. Yeah. And then what? Bhoga Ishwarya Prasaktanam. For prasakta means completely soaked and addicted to bhoga and Aishwarya, power. Power and consumption. That's all they want. They're not just silent consumers, give me more. No, they also want power. And then, taya apahrita chetasam, their minds have been hijacked by desire for bhoga and power. Vyavasayatmika buddhi, samadhau na vidhiyate. There is no possibility of nishchaya for such people, or for the people who are in the company of such people. Both are talked about. Who are the chela? Chela means shishyas of such people, or the people, such people themselves. They are unable to make this nishchaya. Then what? How do you say that I am able to make this nishchaya? What separates me? How come I am able to make this nishchaya? Because you are asking me to make this nishchaya. Well, what separates you is because you are in the presence of someone who is able to give that teaching. Number one. And number two, the Mundakopanishad says something very powerful at the end. Atmagyam hi archayet bhuti kamaha. Bhuti is gains in the relative world. It's called bhuti, bhukti, same thing. Bhuti kamaha. So the gains in the relative world everybody wants. Even to study, you want a good body, correct? And your family should be okay. Otherwise, you can't come and study. Your job should be, not on the brink all the time. Some money should be in the bank. You should have some way of coming to the class or whatever it is. Some transportation is needed. All these things, as long as they are okay, then you can study. So the sambhuti is very important. Atmagyam hi archayet bhuti kamaha. Bhuti kamaha means those seeking relative ends, those who are desirous of relative ends, may they worship archayet, may they worship who? Atmagyaha, Atmagyam, Atmanam Janati iti Atmagyaha, the one who knows the self. What is the connection? One who knows the self is only immersed in the self, correct? How will they ensure that I get a job? Or I get, my child married? How are they going to ensure? Because this is the focus of most people. When will my offspring settle down? Indian focus, yeah. The Indian, parents, they don't know how to stop parenting until their offspring gets married. And the offspring, goes off, springs off and does not wish to get married. And so this becomes a very big issue for the Indian parents. Oh, please settle down, And the children also say the same thing. Settle down, mom. Settle down, dad. This is what it is. So these are all the preoccupations of the person. So what is the connection? The person interested in the self, the one who is a Mahatma, Atmagya, is only interested in the truth of the self, correct? Brahmanishtha Shrotriya. So how are they going to ensure that I get a job or I get a pumpkin or whatever I have come for? What is the connection? There is an esoteric connection, a very beautiful connection. Because why is the Atmagya called an Atmagya? Called as an Atmagya. The Atmagya is called as an Atmagya because to be an Atmagya is not easy. You have to have what?
Brahmavid.
Yeah, Brahmavid. To become Brahmavid, what is the first qualification? Vairagya. Yeah, we have just talked about, Tyage Raga. We have talked about that Vairagya, in excess, because Narahari has emphasized this in great measure, in full measure. So that Vairagya means what? That I am not interested in any of the things that you are interested in. Right? That is what the Mahatma's demeanor is. The Mahatma is so fully playing in the realm of the self that there is the asat does not attract. Correct? So really speaking, when you pray for a job or when you pray for something finite, there is no conflict of interest. The Mahatma is not secretly thinking, I wish I had that job too. Yeah. Or vicariously thinking, I wish I was also married. There is no such thing at all. So then when you pray to somebody who is free of that particular want, when you appeal to somebody who happens to be, this is a law, and when you appeal to somebody who happens to be free of that want, it becomes a prayer. And if your prarabdha does not object to it, it comes true. Becomes true. Why? Because the Vairagya is so complete and the compassion and Vairagya abiding in the same person in full measure. Because of the compassion, you catch hold of the Mahatma's feet and you say, please let this become okay. And the Mahatma is completely free of that either way. Does not really want you to have it as much as you want to have it and does not really wish for you to not have it. So the Mahatma may say, Tathastu, so be it. compassionate enough to see that yes, there is a longing here. May this longing be fulfilled. And so the sankalpa of the Mahatma becomes Satya Sankalpa. Because the person is all Sat. This whole section is about Sat. So Satya Sankalpa means what? An intention that is Sat. Sat means what? An existent intention. Oh, this is very exciting. So my non-existent desire gets blessed by the existent one and it becomes an existent intention. Yes, it is ratified. So if your own karma doesn't stand in the way, it comes true. It's fantastic. So awesome. Really magical. So that's why I love that, I love that sentence at the end of the Mundaka Upanishad. Atmagyam hi archayet. You can write this down. Atmagyam hi archayet bhuti kamaha. Atmagyam hi archayet. It's not respect, it's not revere, it's worship. Worship as an altar of surrender. Worship the knower of the self as an altar of surrender, because that person is only, is not seeing you as any different from them. All they see is that oneness, and your desire is immediately in the presence of such a person converted into a powerful prayer which can do nothing but bless. So your desire for even the non-existent becomes an existent reality. That's the power. That's the magic. It's all Maya. It's power. It's very powerful. Because you want it so badly, it comes true because of your own Shraddha that you have brought into the situation. It's like we see this also in the stories of Jesus, parables. We see all this. Some woman had some bad skin disease and was, and she just wanted to, and she was bleeding or something like that. She just wanted to touch the robe of Jesus. She didn't want any darshan. She in fact felt very bad about herself. She felt very impure and, she was not feeling good about herself. Very low self-esteem. She just went through the crowd and just wanted to touch the robe. And in that, she was completely healed. And then Jesus, it says in the story, looked back. Some virtue has gone out of me, he says. Very telling. Virtue here is that, punya. So he saw that somebody, stole a little punya. And of course he didn't care. Okay, my punya bank is diminishing. But he was curious to see what was that? What just happened here? Who was it? And he immediately blessed her, in complete measure. Adi Shankara walks into this woman's house who has nothing. She has literally nothing. And she invites him for bhiksha. All she has is a shriveled up gooseberry fruit in her house, which she offers on a pottery, on a clay plate. And everybody says, how dare you invite a Mahatma of his caliber to feed him this? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? And then extempore, on the spot, Adi Shankara starts to compose the Kanaka Dhara Stotram. Kanaka is gold. Dhara is a endless stream of gold. It starts to rain golden gooseberries all around her house. This is what it is. Atmagyam hi archayet bhuti kamaha. And that sentence is blessed enough. So we know that that's why the Mahatmas are sought after. Not just by people who want Brahma Vidya, the knowledge of Brahman, the knowledge of the self, but by people who want all kinds of things other than Brahma Vidya. Mahatma therefore becomes a very busy Mahatma because, it's not just people who are interested in the knowledge, people who are interested in many other things in addition to the knowledge or sometimes instead of the knowledge. And the Mahatma just blesses and keeps going, And here, the power of the decision is just multiplied when you say, may I be freed from delusion. Because you are milking the power of the Mahatma's Sankalpa, but not for the non-existent, but for the existent. Very powerful. So imagine that if the Mahatma's power is so much that the non-existent becomes existent, imagine what will happen if you pray to know the existent. Definitely it will come true. That is why it says, when the mind starts to feel all light, when the clouds or the fogs, of all this complaint and everything, starts to disperse, quickly make that decision. What is the decision? May I be freed from delusion of always being attracted to what? Asat. More we'll see after the break. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Yeah. Before you break, an announcement, which I had already made yesterday. We are going to have a 1-month course. Some of you have signed up. And those who haven't signed up, I consider that you have signed up. So, because there is no other place than Eugene where I can say this. And so therefore I will. And because all of you have been with me right from the start, and so there is a lot of a lot of confidence. And so here is the thing: we have I think about 150 people plus, 150 plus people from 17 countries who have displayed an interest for this knowledge. And so it was quite a wonderful job to set the schedule, because we had to set it for at least 3 different blocks of time zones, people in Europe. So that's why we have a lot of afternoon classes. Janani is going to be teaching the Gita on weekdays, and in the weekend afternoon I'm teaching Manisha Panchakam. And we have a lot of morning classes, the Sanskrit, which Vidya is going to come and teach from Atlanta. And then we have evening classes for the India people and for our people, East Coast, and other things. So we have a lot of we have classes coming out of all places, and every nook and cranny, whatever you see, there is a class. Like a jack in the box. And so the appeal to you all is to attend in person, because unless there is a quorum of some 3-4 people I need, I need to look at the people and be able to teach, because otherwise it's not really teaching. The teaching is always one-on-one, and regardless of all this technology we have all these expensive classrooms donated by different people. Thanks to them we can do this, but it doesn't work unless there is a group of people here, sitting here. So you can think of it this way: if the more you come to class for this month, what will happen? And after that I'm leaving, so don't worry. I'm leaving for the East Coast. So this month, if you are able to, the more classes you attend, not only do you benefit, but you make it a better experience for people from Switzerland, Sweden, Romania, wherever, Reunion Island, Mauritius, wherever they are, logging on from. Because they benefit, because I can't see them. I just have to, trust, have Shraddha that they are logged on. I can't see them. And so therefore I can see you and I will teach you and they will benefit. So this is what the whole thing is. This is parampara in action. And because the parampara is, the teacher is incomplete without the students, really, because the teacher, is called teacher because it's a relative connection. So the student is what makes the teacher a teacher, really. Otherwise, the teacher is just a sadhu, if the teacher is a sadhu, really. And so therefore, don't discount your presence. Don't discount yourselves. And I know that everybody cannot attend everything. So you decide on the tracks that you're going to take, or better still, spend this break time talking to each other, who is going to come for which class, and then let me know at the end of the break. So that way I can bank on a few people being here. Okay? Yeah. So I know you can take this online, but sitting in Eugene, taking it online, make a little extra effort and come and sit in front of me. Okay? Yeah. So 10 minutes, we'll come back.